So we're going to go over questions that we didn't do yesterday. We probably won't go through all of them, but I'll do a few important ones. So let's take a look at number 1. So when we have a common denominator, we just add our numerators together. So 12 plus 3 would be, so 15 over 5x. Can I simplify this at all? How? So I can divide the top and the bottom by 3, so it'd be 3 over x. Perfect. So if you can simplify, make sure you simplify. But if not, you would just leave your answer how it is. Next, let's take a look at number 6. So here we want to find the least common multiple, which is the same thing as the least common denominator. So we want to factor everything if it can be factored. We want to break it down as much as we can. Can I factor x squared minus 9? Yes. What does it factor into? X plus 3 and x minus 3. And then x plus 3 is just x plus 3. Can't break that apart anymore. So when we list our least common multiple or least common denominator, we start by listing everything from the first set. So we have x plus 3, x minus 3. And then from the second set, we need to make sure x plus 3 is on our list. Is it already on the list? So do I need to rewrite it? No. So our least common multiple would just be x plus 3, x minus 3. All right, so let's do some from the bottom. We want to find the sum or difference. So we are going to add or subtract. So we want to start by finding our least common denominator. So breaking apart the denominators that we have, 2x squared, what would all my factors here be? 2 times x. And then I have 3x, which would just be 3 times x. So for my least common denominator, I have to list everything from the first one. So 2 times x times x. And then from the second group, do I have a 3 on my list already? No, so I have to make sure I include a 3. Do I have an x on my list already? Yes, so I don't have to rewrite it again because I already have one there. And then if we simplify this, it would just be 6x squared because I multiply the 2 and the 3 together and then the x's together. So now we multiply each fraction by whatever's missing in the denominator. So if my least common denominator is 2 times x times 3, and I have 2x and x here, what am I missing? 3. So I have to multiply the top and the bottom by 3. And then for the second fraction, my least common denominator is 2 times x times 3, and I have a 3 and an x. What am I missing? 2x, perfect. Because we need at least 2 x's for our least common denominator to make it that 6x squared. So I have to multiply the top and the bottom by 2x. So we can multiply our numerators together. We get 21 minus 4 times 2x is 8x. So 21 minus 8x over our least common denominator, which we said was 6x squared. So this would be our answer. Let's do number 11. So we want to start by finding the least common denominator. So our first denominator is x plus 4. Can that be factored anymore? Nope. So it's just x plus 4. And then the second one is x minus 3. Can that be factored anymore? No. So we start by listing our first denominator, all the factors there, which is just x plus 4. And then I also need to make sure I have x minus 3 on the list. Do I already have x minus 3 on the list? Nope, so I have to include it, x minus 3. What would I do next once I find my least common denominator? Multiply the top and the bottom by what? What they're missing. So what am I missing from the first fraction? X minus 3. What am I missing from the second fraction? X plus 4. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom times x plus 4. So in the denominator, we're going to get x plus 4 times x minus 3. Whatever our least common denominator was, that's what our denominator is going to be. Because if we multiply these two together, we now have the same denominator, so we're just adding the tops together. So on top, we have 6 times x minus 3. How would I multiply these together? What would I need to do? Distribute. So I'm going to do 2 steps at once here. I'm going to distribute the 6 to the x and the minus 3. So we get 6x minus 18. And then do the same thing here. I have negative 5x times x plus 4. So what's negative 5x times x? Negative 5x squared. And then what is negative 5x times 4? Negative 20x. Perfect. Am I done? What can I do next? Combine like terms on the top. We're going to simplify a little bit. And I'm going to put it in standard form. So let's start with negative 5x squared. What is 6x minus 20x? Negative 14x minus 18 over x plus 4 times x minus 3. So that would be our answer. All right, let's take a look at, let's do number 2. When I have a fraction equals a fraction, how can I solve? Cross multiply. So here we get 4 times x minus 2 is equal to 6 times x plus 2. So that equal sign just stays in the middle. The bottom of one gets multiplied to the top of the other, and the bottom of the other gets multiplied to the top of the first. What would I do next to solve for x? Distribute. So here we just solve for x like we normally would. Got to distribute, so I have 4x minus 8 is equal to 6x plus 12. Then what? Move all of your x's to one side so I can subtract 4x. Move the x's on the right, and then move your constants to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 12, move that to the left. So I have negative 20 is equal to 2x. Divide both sides by 2, so what does x equal? Negative 10. Perfect. Let's take a look at number 3. So what could I do to solve number 3? I can cross multiply, but what do you notice about the second fraction? It's the same on the top and the bottom. If I had something like 10 divided by 10, what is 10 divided by 10? 1. So can I simplify x minus 5 divided by x minus 5 to just 1? Yeah. So we can just change this to be 1. But it changed the question a little bit. So am I cross multiplying still? We can. How do I make 1 a fraction? Put it over 1. So that would just be 1 over 1. Now we can cross multiply. So I have 1 times negative 3 is equal to 1 times x plus 1. So negative 3 is equal to x plus 1. Then we would solve for x. I can subtract 1 on both sides. So negative 4 is equal to x. So that would be our answer. If you didn't simplify and you solved by multiplying and then factoring, what was the other answer that you got? 5. Now let's look at our bottom, the bottom of the fraction here. Can I have 5 as an answer? If I plugged 5 in, what's 5 minus 5? 0, which doesn't work. So if you had 5 and negative 4 as your answers, you'd have to check them both. And when you plug 5 in, 5 would not work. So your only answer would be negative 4. So that's one of the benefits of simplifying. That way, see, it's a lot easier once we simplified. We didn't have to multiply it out, combine like terms, factor. We just had to combine like terms, and then we were done. All right, let's do number 6. For 6, we're just finding our least common denominator. So my first denominator is x plus 5. Can I factor that anymore? Nope, just x plus 5. Second denominator is just x, and the third one is just x. So we start by listing all of the factors of our first denominator, so that would be x plus 5. Next, we're going to move on to our second denominator, x. Do I have just an x here? No. I have an x plus 5, but that's different than just x, so I have to make sure I include x on my list too. Now moving on to the third denominator. Do I have an x on my list now? Yeah. So do I have to include the other x? No, because I already have one. So my least common denominator would be x plus 5 times x. This one we didn't have to solve, just find the least common denominator. Let's go to number 7. Okay, so we are solving. Just like before, we need to find our least common denominator first. So starting with our first denominator, that would be 3. Moving on to the second, we have x. Do I already have x on my list of least common denominators? So do I need to include it? Yes. What's the denominator of 4? 1. Do I have to include 1 on my list? No, not really, because it would just be 1 times 3x, which is just 3x. But we can put it 4 over 1 just so we can see that our denominator is 1 to kind of help us a little bit. What would I do next? So I can multiply by the least common denominator, so everything gets multiplied times 3x. And then when solving, your denominators are going to cancel out. So you're only working with the numerators, so then you get rid of the fractions when solving. So it's only when solving you get rid of the fractions. So what cancels out in my first fraction? The 3. So whatever's in your denominator already cancels out with whatever you just multiplied, your least common denominator. So technically you are only multiplying by the missing factor. In the second fraction, what cancels? The x's. So here I would just have 2 times 3. Does anything cancel in my third fraction? No. So it would be 4 times 3x. So let's multiply all of this together now. We have 4x plus 6 is equal to 12x. What would I do next to solve? Combine like terms. Subtract 4x to the other side. So 6 is equal to 8x. Divide by 8. So what does x equal? 3 over 4. Awesome. It was 6 over 8, but we could simplify our fraction to 3 over 4. Let's do number 9. So I can make 3 over 1. And then we want to find our least common denominator. So what would my first denominator factor into? Just x minus 3. So x minus 3. Now if I have a denominator of 1, do I have to include that on the list? No, because multiplying by 1 is just the same thing. Do I have x on my list? No. Even though I have x minus 3, that is different than just x. These two are different factors, so you have to include both of them. So our least common denominator is x minus 3 times x. What would I do next? Multiply. I can multiply by my least common denominator, but technically what ends up getting multiplied? The missing ones. So you don't really have to write out everything. If you want to, you can. But you're technically just multiplying by the missing terms. Because if it's already in the denominator, it cancels out. So for the first one, what gets multiplied times x minus 2? Just x. In the second, I'm missing everything. So I got to multiply 3 times x minus 3, and times x. And then in the third, what would cancel out in the third one? X. So it'd be 2x times x minus 3. So let's write it all out. I have x times x minus 2 plus 3 times x minus 3 times x is equal to 2x times x minus 3. All right, so it should just be this, because I accidentally multiplied that x to it, but the x cancels. Good catch. All right, so now let's multiply all this out. Again, so we have x squared minus 2x plus 3x squared minus 9x is equal to 2x squared minus 6x. Now we're going to combine like terms. So I have 4x squared minus 11x is equal to 2x squared minus 6x. Got to move everything to the other side. So I'm going to move everything to the left just to keep my x squared positive. I'm going to subtract 2x squared and add 6x. So we got 2x squared minus 5x is equal to 0. Does this look more like it? Yeah. How do I factor this? Take out the GCF. So what's my GCF? X. So I take out the x and I'm left with 2x minus 5. What would I do next to solve? Set them both equal to 0. So we have x is equal to 0 and 2x minus 5 is equal to 0. So x is equal to 0 is going to be one of our answers. For the next one, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So 2x is equal to 5 and divide by 2. So x is equal to 5 over 2. When we get multiple answers, you have to check your work. What am I checking for? What could I not have when I'm dealing with fractions? 0 where? In the denominator. So I'm going to plug my answers in and see which one, if one of them gives me 0 in the denominator. So I have 0 minus 3. Is that 0? Nope, so we're good there. If I plug in 0 to x, do I have 0 in the denominator? So is 0 one of my answers? Nope. And then let's just plug in 5 over 2 just to be super sure. I have 5 over 2 minus 3. Is that 0? Nope. We're good there. And then 5 over 2 and x, that's not 0 either. So 5 over 2 works. So that would be our only answer. All right, let's do number 10. What's the first thing I need to do? Least common denominator. So my first denominator factors into just x minus 5. Second one is x, and third one is x minus 5. So for my least common denominator, I'm going to list the first one. Do I have x on my list already? No. So I got to make sure I include x. And then do I have x minus 5 on the list? Yeah, so we're good there. So our least common denominator is x minus 5 times x. What do I do next? Multiply everything by the least common denominator. What ends up getting multiplied? The missing one. So everything gets multiplied times x minus 5 and x. But if it's already in the denominator, we can cancel it out. So in the first one, I have 4 times x. Second one, 1 times x minus 5. And the third one, we get x minus 1 times x. So let's write all of this out. So I'm going to do it all on the side over here. So when I multiply, I get 4x plus x minus 5, because 1 times x minus 5 is just x minus 5. And then here I'm going to distribute the x. So it'd be x squared minus x. Everybody with me so far? Good here. What would I need to do next? Move everything to one side. So I'm going to combine like terms and move it to one side. So I have 5x minus 5 is equal to x squared minus x. Subtract 5x to move it to the other side and add 5. So 0 is equal to x squared minus 6x plus 5. What would I do next? Factor. Do we have two factors of 5 that add to negative 6? Negative 1 and negative 5. So this factors into x minus 5 and x minus 1. How would I find what just x is equal to? Set them both equal to 0. So what does x equal? 5 and 1. Awesome. Now if I get two answers, what do I have to do? Check your work. So let's plug in 5. We have 5 minus 5. What's 5 minus 5? 0. Can I get 0 in the denominator? No. So what does that mean? 5 is not an answer. Let's just plug in 1 just to be super sure that that one works too. That one works at all. So if I plug in 1, what's 1 minus 5? Negative 4. So that's good there because it's not 0. 1 in the denominator works. We can have 1. And then 1 minus 5 is negative 4. So it's good there too. So what's our answer? X equals 1.